November 21st, 2008. In a cold afternoon, a 19-year-old kid was arrested in the University of Florida for stealing a laptop from another student. When the police confronted him, he allegedly threw the laptop out of a window to hide the evidence, unknowing to anybody that this kid will eventually grow up to become Cam Newton, one of the greatest quarterbacks the NFL has ever seen.
And there is the man we talked about. Cam Newton comes to play with his first NFL touchdown.
Even though you've been raised
As a player, he had it all, an electrifying mix of power, speed, and charisma that made him one of the most unique talents in football history.
You think it's not going to
Carrying the worst team in the NFL to the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, he had a tragic incident, one that took him out of the game and almost ruined his career.
I done gave this whole city, I gave this whole franchise, I gave the coaches everything. My mind, my body, my soul, my heart. And this how y'all treat me, bro?
This is the story of a young man who ruled the NFL in two different teams.
Newton steps up, throws for the end zone, holds it!
You are here for a reason.
Newton was born in 1989 in a suburban neighborhood in Atlanta, Georgia. His father had played in the NFL for the Cowboys and Eagles back in the 80s, and from a young age, Cam knew football was in his blood. His older brother, Cecil, carved out a career in the trenches of the NFL as an offensive lineman. Meanwhile, his younger brother followed the path, stepping onto the field at Auburn as a quarterback. However, Cam was different. From an early age, his physical gifts set him apart. Growing up, he started with baseball and basketball, but his towering height raised too many questions about him. Opposing coaches and parents frequently demanded to see his birth certificate, unable to believe a child could be that big, that dominant. Yet, baseball wasn't in the cards for him. A fear of being hit by a pitch ended his time on the diamond. As for basketball, that didn't last long either. His aggressive style led to constant foul trouble and early exits. But then, he found football and football found him. With his newfound love, he started playing the game early and quickly set his sights on being a quarterback. At Westlake High School, he joined the team as a junior and wasted no time in becoming a difference maker. With a cannon for an arm and a frame built for power, he was a nightmare for any team that lined up against him. However, his first season had him throw for over 2,550 yards with 23 touchdowns, while also rushing for more than 600 yards and adding 9 more scores. But it wasn't just the numbers that caught attention, it was his drive to win. By his next season, Cam had grown into his full stature and was rated as a 3-star recruit. Scouts marveled at his raw athleticism. Yet Cam kept improving. By his senior year, he was throwing for over 4,000 yards, and the transformation was undeniable. The turning point came at the 2007 All-American Bowl, where the nation's top high school seniors clashed. Named the East's starting quarterback, Cam completed 8 of 12 passes for 181 yards and a touchdown, earning the game's MVP honors and a 5-star rating. Offers poured in from every direction, but one school stood out, the University of Florida. The Gators were fresh off a national championship, and Tim Tebow was set to take over as their full-time starter.
It ain't happening! We get the ball, I promise you one thing, we're gonna hit somebody and we're taking down the field for a touchdown. I guarantee you that!
Newton arrived in Gainesville in 2007, winning the backup job over John Brantley. Even in limited action, he showed flashes of brilliance, particularly as a running threat. But just as his sophomore year began, he experienced a tragic moment. An ankle injury sidelined him for the season, forcing him into a medical redshirt. At this point, it was only a matter of time before things went bad for him. During bowl season, Newton was caught stealing a laptop from another student. Felony charges of larceny, burglary, and obstruction charges were placed on him. The university suspended him. When asked about the incident, Newton insisted one mistake shouldn't define him. But too many signs of academic dishonesty followed. There were rumors that he had cheated on multiple papers at Florida. Ultimately, all charges were dropped after he agreed to a pretrial diversion program, but the damage was done.
I had hiccups in my life, but yet that don't define who I really am.
With a scandal behind him and Tebow returning for his senior year, Newton had no choice but to leave for Blinn College in Brenham, Texas. It was there that he rebuilt his reputation and reminded the world who he was.
My best chances to come back to the top was going the dream college route.
Leading his team to a JUCO national championship, Newton re-established himself as the nation's top quarterback recruit. He also steered the team to the 2009 NJCAA national championship with a nail-biting 31-26 victory. That season, he amassed 2,800 passing yards with 22 touchdowns, while also rushing for 700 yards and 16 touchdowns. Now unstoppable and buzzing with potential, he became the most recruited junior quarterback in the country. Everyone wanted him. He was the only five-star quarterback available, but this time he chose Auburn, a university that allowed him to redefine what it meant to be a game changer.
He and I would talk daily about the schools that were available, what they had to offer, what he was bringing to the table. Auburn was a cinch.
In his debut week against Arkansas State, he threw for 186 yards, ran for 171, and scored 5 touchdowns, earning him SEC Offensive Player of the Week honors, and week after week, he kept delivering. Initially, his arrival in 2010 was a perfect match for Coach Gus Malzahn's high-powered offense. He wasn't just good, he was historic. He broke SEC records at a blistering pace, racking up rushing yards and touchdowns like they were effortless. Auburn stormed through the season undefeated, setting the stage for one of the greatest comebacks in college football history. Down 24-0 in the Iron Bowl against Alabama, Auburn's championship hopes were almost over, but they had one thing that no other team did: Cam Newton. What followed was absolutely legendary. Newton led a furious comeback, pushing Auburn to a 28-27 victory and becoming the best player in the country. So he ran away with the 2010 Heisman Trophy and led Auburn to the national title game. In his final collegiate game with everything on the line against Oregon, Newton orchestrated a game-winning drive, setting up the final kick to crown Auburn as national champions. He had also led the Auburn Tigers to a flawless 12-0 record, then powered them to a dominant SEC championship win, demolishing South Carolina 56-17. That season, he threw for nearly 2,900 yards, added 1,500 rushing yards, and tallied 51 touchdowns. Honors poured in as he was awarded the SEC Offensive Player of the Year, AP Player of the Year, and the Heisman Trophy. Many argue that his performance was one of the most dominant ever seen in college football. After all these achievements, his work was done, and as you would expect, in less than a week later, Cam Newton was declared for the NFL draft. Off-the-field issues were noted by scouts, yet nothing could affect his NFL dream. The Carolina Panthers, coming off a dismal 2-14 season in 2010, took a chance and selected Cam with the #1 overall pick.
With the first pick in the 2011 NFL Draft, the Carolina Panthers select Cam Newton.
And just like that, Cam Newton's journey was set to become one of the greatest players that would shock the world, not only with his play style, but also with controversies, which we will get into later. The Carolina Panthers were desperate for a franchise quarterback. Their offense was one of the worst in recent NFL history, and Newton was the undisputed best prospect available. It was a perfect fit. With the first overall pick in the 2011 NFL Draft, the Panthers selected Cam Newton, and just like that, he was handed the keys to an NFL franchise. His highly anticipated debut came in Week 1 of the 2011 season against the Arizona Cardinals. And just like everywhere he had been before, Newton wasted no time proving he was different. In his first game, he started overperforming, throwing for 422 yards and 2 touchdowns, a record-breaking debut. The next week, he topped himself with 432 yards. By the end of the season, the Panthers finished with a 6-10 record. On paper, it didn't look great, but anyone who watched knew the numbers didn't tell the full story. Cam was electric. He became the first rookie quarterback in NFL history to throw for over 4,000 yards. He had 21 passing touchdowns, but also threw 17 interceptions, proof of his fearless, aggressive style. But what truly separated him from the rest was his ability to dominate on the ground. Cam ran for 706 yards, setting a new rookie quarterback rushing record at the time. He also scored 14 rushing touchdowns, an all-time record for a quarterback in a single season, a record that would stand until Jalen Hurts later surpassed it with the infamous tush push. It was no surprise that Newton won Offensive Rookie of the Year and earned a trip to the Pro Bowl. He was a game changer, and everyone knew it. But beyond statistics, there was something else that made Cam different. He wasn't just throwing, though, he was dominating on the ground, setting a single-season record with 14 rushing touchdowns by a quarterback. While the NFL had a strict stance on sportsmanship, excessive celebrations were often viewed as disrespectful. Players avoided them to steer clear of penalties and fines. But Cam didn't care. After every single touchdown, he made sure everyone knew he had arrived. This time, a new alter ego was born, Super Cam. Every time he found the end zone, he would rip open his jersey, revealing the Superman logo beneath, a celebration that later became iconic. Some loved it, others hated it, but one thing was certain: Cam Newton was box office. His passing and rushing numbers remained strong, but his game matured. He cut down his interceptions, and the once struggling Panthers improved to a respectable 7-9. By 2013, Newton was reaching his prime. The Panthers started slow, losing their first 4 games, but then something clicked. They went on an 11-1 run, winning the NFC South and earning a playoff spot. If not for a loss to the Saints, they would have run the table. But the Panthers finished 12-4, clinching the number 2 seed in the NFC and earning a first-round bye. Cam's playoff debut came against the San Francisco 49ers, a team with a terrifying defense. It was a battle where he completed 16 of 25 passes for 267 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions while taking 5 brutal sacks. And even while the Panthers fought hard, they fell to the 49ers, 23-10, eliminating them from the playoffs. But Newton had given the world a glimpse of what was coming. In 2014, Cam Newton faced his toughest season yet. For the first time in his career, injuries forced him to miss a game, but it wasn't just one injury. He fought through a battered body all year long. Fractured ribs, a bum ankle, and then, just weeks before the playoffs, he faced the biggest disasters in his career. A violent car crash left Newton with 2 fractured vertebrae. For most, that would mean months on the sidelines, but for Cam, he only missed just 1 game.
Quarterback Cam Newton out of the hospital now after fracturing his back, an accident that flipped his truck. Newton lying on a stretcher, his spine fractured actually in 2 places, then rushed to the hospital.
Despite the pain, despite the setbacks, he continued to lead. And in the process, he became the only player in NFL history to throw for 10,000 yards and rush for over 2,000 in his first 4 seasons. This determination carried the Panthers to their first playoff victory in a decade, but 2014 was only the beginning. With Cam back under center, the Panthers won their final 2 games, clinching the NFC South with a record of 7-8-1. In the wild card round, they faced the 11-5 Arizona Cardinals, who were down to their 3rd-string quarterback after injuries to Carson Palmer and his backup. Cam seized the moment, throwing for nearly 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, securing his first ever NFL playoff victory. But the road only got tougher from there. In the divisional round, the Panthers faced Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks, a team built to punish mistakes. Cam put up a fight, throwing for over 240 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he also threw 2 costly interceptions, including a backbreaking pick 6 that sealed the game. Unfortunately, the Panthers lost 31-17, ending their season. And in fact, they wouldn't have to wait long for redemption. In 2015, the Panthers started strong with a Week 1 win over the Jaguars. Then, they just kept winning. They steamrolled through the league, staying undefeated for 13 straight games before suffering their first loss to the Atlanta Falcons. The team was on the verge of something special, and Cam Newton was about to have a season for the ages, having ascended to another level. His skills as a passer had sharpened, his athleticism remained unmatched, and defenses had no answers. Every week it seemed inevitable: 2 touchdowns through the air, 1 on the ground. And so the awards kept piling up. Offensive Player of the Week, he won it 5 times. And this time the Panthers went 15-1, securing the NFC's top seed. So there was no debate. Super Cam was the MVP. And when the playoffs started, Newton only got better. On the other hand, Carolina bulldozed their way to Super Bowl 50, racking up 30-plus point leads with ease. It was supposed to be the defining moment of his career, but then he met his weakness. Before the match, Newton had won Offensive Player of the Week 5 times, tying a record set by 2007 Tom Brady. He was named to the Pro Bowl, selected as a first-team All-Pro, crowned MVP, and honored as the Offensive Player of the Year. But individual accolades weren't the goal. He and the Panthers had their eyes on something bigger. On the sport's biggest stage, he faced a different kind of monster, the Denver Broncos' suffocating defense. Led by Von Miller, they did what no other team could: they shut down Super Cam. The Panthers opened the playoffs against the Seahawks in the divisional round, and they came out swinging. By halftime, Carolina had built an overwhelming 31-0 lead, but then the unthinkable happened. They didn't score a single point for the rest of the game, so the Panthers' dream season ended in heartbreak. Meanwhile, Newton's 3 turnovers and that one infamous moment overshadowed everything he had accomplished. He walked away from the podium, refusing to answer questions. And just like that, the narrative had changed. Then came the NFC Championship game against the 13-3 Arizona Cardinals, one of the best teams in the league. It was supposed to be a battle. Instead, it was a massacre. Newton torched the Cardinals, racking up nearly 400 total yards and 4 touchdowns, while the Panthers' defense forced 7 turnovers. The result? result was a 49-15 beatdown, sending Carolina to the Super Bowl. But what awaited them on the biggest stage would be unlike anything Cam Newton had ever faced. The Panthers' opponent? The Denver Broncos, led by a legendary quarterback in Peyton Manning and a defense for the ages. Nicknamed the no-fly zone, Denver's secondary was impenetrable. Their front seven was even scarier. Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware, and company were unstoppable. From the very first quarter, it was clear this game would be a defensive war. Newton fumbled early, and Denver scooped it up for a touchdown. Neither offense could get rolling. The defenses dictated every moment. Somehow the Broncos won 24-10, and Cam Newton left the field in silence. While the loss was devastating, the reaction was even worse.
They got a couple big plays, but I feel like
his reputation had taken a massive hit, and the years that followed became a disaster. Newton returned in 2016 as the league's most dangerous dual-threat quarterback, but something had changed. He battled injuries throughout the season, struggling to recapture the magic of his MVP run. Even as he became the all-time leader in quarterback rushing touchdowns, his production declined. The hits piled up, the body wore down, and for the first time, Newton seemed mortal. In 2018, the Panthers started strong at 6-2, but Newton's surgically repaired shoulder began to fail him. The zip on his passes faded, and Carolina collapsed, losing 6 straight. Another shoulder surgery followed, and the next season, before he could mount a comeback, a Lisfranc injury to his foot ended his year before it even began. While the NFL might seem unforgiving, Newton's unique style and physical play that made him unstoppable had also taken its toll. Now, he was an injury-prone 30-year-old quarterback who had just missed an entire season, and when the Panthers moved on, no one was willing to trade for him. But something far worse happened in Week 14 against the Chargers. During a high-intensity game, he threw an interception in the red zone, then tried to make a tackle on the return. In doing so, he injured the AC joint in his throwing shoulder, an injury he later admitted plagued him for years. However, in 2017, he led the Panthers to an 11-5 record, eventually losing in the wild card round to the Saints. Just 3 seasons removed from being the league's best player, Newton found himself jobless. For 3 months, he waited. Then, a call came from an unlikely place, the New England Patriots. With Tom Brady gone, Bill Belichick took a chance on Newton, but the magic was fading. He finished 2020 with more interceptions than touchdowns, a shadow of his former self. When the Patriots drafted Mac Jones in 2021, the writing was on the wall. Newton was released. But even though his career didn't end with the fairy tale finish he deserved, history will remember him as more than just his final seasons. However, the quarterback is not a stranger to controversy. In the spring of 2022, during an appearance on the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast, Newton talked about his perspectives on gender roles, drawing from his upbringing in a household he described as having a perfect example of what a man was through his father and a clear image of what a woman was from his mother and grandmother. He even criticized women who can't cook and don't know when to be quiet, implying that such attributes diminish their value in a relationship. These opinions had him at a center of criticism, with many accusing Newton of perpetuating outdated and misogynistic stereotypes.
I knew what a woman was, not a bad.
Okay, what's the difference?
A woman.
Okay.
A bad is a person who's just, you know, girl, I'm a bad bitch. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I look the part, but I don't act the part.
Sports journalist Nicole Auerbach hit back with a comment on X that said, "Based on this, I'd argue Cam's the one who doesn't know when to be quiet." In response to the backlash he received, Newton released an 8-minute video titled, "Let Me Explain My Comments," claiming that his words were taken out of context.
But it was a clip that was taken completely out of context. I knew my true intentions when I was doing that, and I think people don't understand that whole interview was an hour and 15 minutes long.
He emphasized that he did not intend to degrade or diminish the value of women, and that his comments were a reflection of his personal preferences shaped by his upbringing. Even though he isn't the most loved NFL player, he is certainly an MVP, a Heisman winner, and a national champion. Above all, he is one of the greatest dual-threat quarterbacks to ever play the game. He even turned a struggling franchise into a contender, making a whole generation of kids smile by handing them touchdown balls. Love him or hate him, one thing is certain, there will never be another Cam Newton. Do you think he should be listed among the best in the game? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed watching our breakdown, drop a like and press the subscribe button, because there are a lot of really interesting videos coming soon that we are sure you will like.